Wholeness and balanced vibrations to everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the premiere of Astral Quest. Of course, you've definitely logged on to the 2012 show, and today is going to be really our first day utilizing this live stream platform, so that way everyone can start seeing really me here in the studio, and also getting more of that connection that is necessary for us to really be able to absorb this level of information that is being presented. Of course, this is a major time for all of us, but before I even start, because we've put in a great deal of new equipment, and we have to kind of calibrate to make sure things are going to work out properly, I'm going to ask first anyone from the 2012 show, because you have to realize that there's going to be about a 5 to 6 second lag time when you're looking at the live stream platform, because of course it's streaming, so it takes a minute. So depending upon your connection, you can either choose to remain and listen to us only through audio, which is through the 2012 show, or you could choose to look through live stream, but you'll have to basically turn one of those down because it'll just start to confuse you. Also, I just want to let everyone know that there is going to be clear digital recording, audio and video of the conversation that's going to take place today. So you will have the opportunity to look over this clearly if for some reason your connection is not working well. So before I begin, I'm again going to ask someone in the 2012 show chat room to let me know how it sounds, because we did have to make some sound adjustments yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and check into that chat box. Looks like most people have migrated already over to the live stream platform in itself. But again, I'll ask anyone that if you're utilizing either chat box, which is in the either Astral Quest, which is on the live stream platform, or Blog Talk Radio, to simply type "We're hearing you clearly," and then that will give me the indication that everything is coming through. So I'm just going to wait for that before we begin. Again, I'm asking anyone to just notify me if the audio is clear or not. And of course, someone says loud and clear, but a bit choppy. What I would recommend people do is to choose really which platform that you're going to utilize. And what will happen is you'll probably have the opportunity to listen clearly. And let me go ahead and pull down the audio a little bit here, just so... So we're making sure that we're getting that clear enough. Okay. All right. So if you, again, are experiencing somewhat of a choppy connection, you may have to either take down live stream or take down Blog Talk Radio, either one. But you'll be able to catch pretty much the same information through both, except for with live stream. Of course, we have a plethora of pictures and things to show you, even videos to show you in regards to what we're going to talk about today. So my main concern, okay, great. Everyone's saying that we're coming through loud and clear. So we're going to go ahead and begin this. Of course, like I said, it's a long time coming. We really were working for a while in getting this type of setup going on, where you guys can see me live and I can also share pictures and images with you. So let me explain to you how this will really work just for now, because of course we're tweaking things a little bit, and we're going to find a way to really work more fluid with the program, but of course we got to begin from somewhere. So how this will work is that when we discuss particular things, especially different types of knowledge, we'll have the pictures and the videos associated with what we're discussing. But in order for you to access that, you'll have to look at the live stream platform, and I'm sure that link has been shared. And then what will happen is that while we're discussing it, what I'll do is I'll allow a link to go live. So for instance, let's give a brief example here. I'm going to utilize this United Nations picture that I uploaded and publish it now. Of course, what this picture is showing is the highest man point on Earth is actually Mount Baal Hermon, which is, of course, the mountain that was talked about as being the mountain that all the fallen angels came into harmony with each other to agree on their adventures into the earth. So of course, you would see that image live. It would pop up. And so hopefully that's working for everyone. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into this. I'm going to go into my notes. I first want to tell everyone, welcome to Astral Quest Interactive Enlightenment. Like I said, this has been a moment in trying to get started only because, of course, I'm in Costa Rica. We have somewhat of a shaky bandwidth. But in addition to that, there's just been so much stuff going on these days and keeping up with so many things like the new information coming out and constant study. It hasn't really allowed us to be able to fully conceive the idea of how we can do this. So now, of course, I've been working night and day to figure out how I can get to you and get this information to you in a more clear format. So this has accomplished that. I first want to start off because this will be the first time for many individuals, and not only just maybe seeing me personally or in action, except for some of the old videos, but also maybe the first time in tuning into our network. So I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is James Evans Bomar III. I am the author of the Code of the Matrix and the developer of not only the Astral Quest platform, but the Resistance platform, which you'll find at www.resistance2010.com. And we've been publicly in the esoteric world for about 3 years. Yeah, I think that's our time. We're about 6,000 active members strong with over, I think we're at about 2 or 3 million impressions all over the internet. And of course, this started 3 years ago with the advent of a major awakening within myself that I felt that I should spread to others in order to get them in the know about higher levels of activation and our involvement here in the universe. So I've been seeking to expand that. I, of course, have about 1,000, I believe about 1,100 individual posts detailing information that I've discovered along the way. And that information, again, is available on the Resistance 2010 website, which can also be accessed at astralquest.com. Really, right now, it's time for humanity to have that conversation. That conversation is about the ET activity and occult involvement here in the world. This is a conversation that your president should have had with you a long time ago. Even your parents probably should have had this conversation with you a long time ago if they had known. And so what's happening today is that you're going to officially get the conversation that you need to have in order to know about what's going on in the world. So this will be basically the birds and the bees of occult knowledge and spiritual knowledge, because if you realize how the earth functions, we have a material plane and then we have a physical plane. And of course, in many cases, the physical plane exercises its dominance over, or the spiritual plane exercises its dominance over the physical plane. And so any individual that is spiritually adept or involved in things of a spiritual nature, especially if they have their knowledge intact, can really affect only or primarily physical person, meaning a person that is more attached to the flesh, or what I call the pentagram nature of the reality, more so than understanding the macrocosm. So it's important for us all to really be able to harmonize with the planet now, because of course many individuals are basically in a state of slumber or sleep, and this ship that we're driving, well, you know, we were driving it until we fell asleep, is being guided by individuals who have the knowledge of how to steer planets and steer the course of humanity. And so them taking that duty exclusively is causing an extreme level of bottlenecking within our reality. Not only does this manifest as a higher level of ignorance, which to me is darkness, but also a great level of dependency where everyone is running around pretty much like children because they haven't been instructed fully about what the adults or the adepts are really doing. And so we're going to get right into this. I'm going to do a little sound check just to make sure everything is going through clear. And as I said before earlier in this conversation, if for some reason your audio or video is coming through choppy, then you may have to shut down one of the platforms. The easiest way is to also, if you can support both platforms, is to mute the live stream broadcast platform, because of course you're getting this in real time over Blog Talk Radio, but the video has a slight lag on it. But you will need the live stream platform to follow along with us today in regards to the imagery and the videos that will be sent over this platform, which is done in real time. Now, understand that the reason why Astral Quest is beginning, as I talked about before, everything is timed. A lot of the information that I've come across, especially within the last 2 months, I've known for quite some time. However, the magnitude of exactly what it means has only put itself together basically within this last 3 to 4 months, there's been an extreme opening of the energy and a massive understanding of exactly what we're going through here in the reality. And because I have the opportunity to not only participate in that daily, it's basically my job, but I also have the opportunity to scan it across or run it across different things that I already have understood or read or experienced to basically get to you what is really the truth. So to understand Astral Quest and the resistance is to understand that we take the highest levels of information available in the universe, and then we scan that information and filter it through a cipher that basically weeds out untruths or half-truths, as I call them, and then we deliver that information to you based on the universal system, which of course is as above, so below, meaning that if you're truly telling the truth, you should be able to find heavenly and earthly correspondence to that information. So if anyone is giving you information that you cannot map all the way from the top all the way to the bottom as far as its actual correspondences, then you have to question the authenticity of that truth. In doing that, you'll give yourself an opportunity to adapt an entirely different system of how you ingest information. We have to see now that today we are bombarded with information, and the individual may easily tell us a lie in order to entertain us. And this, of course, has happened a lot, especially through Hollywood. I mean, we get fictitious stories all the time that have no truth to them, but they're portrayed as being real life. And of course, we call that a movie. So what this involves is it involves us getting more of a bearing at what we're taking into our mind, body, and soul, so that way we cannot live in a state of confusion and disharmony, because what this does is it actually deactivates us. Now, most humans are in a deactivated or slumber type theta state. So you have to understand that what activation is and awakening is rising into the higher frequencies of self. And of course, the highest maxim within our network is all is self. So we're not here to tell you about only that the reptilians are doing bad things, or that, you know, the governor is doing bad things, or that it's the Queen of England doing bad things. What we're telling you is that all of these individuals are connected to us, and we're all moving in a unit together. And so when some of the parts are not functioning properly, it will cause a hindrance to all the other subsequent parts, just like the body works. If your heart is not working, you will rapidly find your body shutting down. Same thing if the liver is not working, you'll find yourself getting very toxic and then going into your decay process. So it's the same thing going on here on Earth. If we don't understand how to manage the components that are here and how to understand them fully for their purposes, this can equal a mental, spiritual, and even a hyperdimensional breakdown within our vehicles. So today is also going to be about repairing, which of course means everything is done on a dual reality or a binary world in pairs, just like male and female. So repairing means to put back on the other side of who you really are. And that brings me to the beginning almost of even the work with the Code of the Matrix, which it talks about us uniting with our oversoul, or some people call that the twin flame. Some people call that the shadow. Some people call that their guide or their Eve angel. Some even call it their Messiah. Some call it their God. But in reality, this being, this entity which is encompassed in everything, is a part of us that we have not discovered. And so our entire existence here in the universe, which I just dub as the Astral Quest or the EverQuest, is designed for us to discover more parts of self, even in reaching into other planetary systems and seeing beings that obey different kinds of geometry that is completely foreign to us. It doesn't mean that they're foreign to existence. It basically makes us have to ask the question that even the highest being that we can conceive in our mind, that being itself, where did it come from? And if you keep asking yourself this question, like, where did it come from? Where did it come from? It will eventually lead back to self. And one of the major, not so much as a diagram, but as an idea that we use to convey that is that if you go to your mother, and then you go to her mother, and then you go to her mother, and then you go to her mother, what you'll eventually get is you'll get a shape that's very similar to a pyramid, and you'll get to the top of that pyramid, meaning you'll get to original races where the earth wasn't as populated and there were only a few people, a few tribes, etc. But if you keep going back all the way to the top, you get to what I call the apex being, which is, of course, for us, the fully collected amount of our energy, or the totality of our energy. It's important for us to see our ancestors as also us, because we were inside of our ancestors then, especially in the heavenly abode or in the spiritual abode, yet to be birthed through into the physical reality. So the first geometry that I'm going to show you that corresponds to what we're talking about today is the hexagram and the pentagram, because what happens is that when we get into a physical reality, someone has to show you this. Someone has to explain it to you in one way or another. So what we've done in our world is we've come up with designs, we've come up with the shapes, we've even looked into our own nature to come up with the actual geometry that corresponds to our experience. So the first thing that I want to show here, just before I begin to talk about the hexagram and the pentagram and the hexagram, is this piece of pyrite, which you may not be able to see here on the camera. Actually, I can hold it up really close for a second here. As you'll see, this pyrite contains a pentagram. So if someone is going to tell you right off the bat, oh my goodness, he's talking about, what do they call that, pagan knowledge, that's a farce. Pagan knowledge, for how they give it the terms these days, does not stem far back enough to create what actually grows on the mountains of Venus, which they've already discovered that pyrite actually is what most mountains on Venus, the planet, are formed of. So what happens here is that we see that there becomes a rift in our understanding of what's going on in the world based on the interpretations that have been given thus far. So if someone tells you, yes, the pentagram is used in conjunction with magic and by pagan individuals, but fails to tell you that the pentagram also has the degrees and the calculations of 5, which is actually how things are created in the physical reality, then you can see what the huge problem would be if for some reason you decide to demonize the pentagram. So what happens here is that as we're all going through this quest, what Astral Quest has done is put us together. So while we're getting this information, we're able to scan it through all of the different channels that we've already have, even ourselves. Of course, there's 6,000 people in the network, and then we're able to come up with the real truth. So I ask everyone to take that approach with what you're understanding today, or understanding as we call it, and don't focus too heavy on what you don't know, but focus on what you will know after this conversation. So it's very important for us to see the beginning of the world as a stage in which the only thing that man and woman were concerned with most was fertility. When entering into a physical reality, there has to be a great level of production. As you can see, even within the Bible, one of the first real commandments that were given is be fruitful and multiply. So what this is really about is, actually let me check sound before I continue to go on here, and we possibly have a sound situation. Okay, great. So it looks like sound's working correctly. So you have to understand that one of the first commandments that was given to man and woman when they arrived here on the earth from their oversoul is be fruitful and multiply. What this means is, look, there's not too many humans on earth. There's not too many animals on earth. In fact, there's not too much of anything, because earth is basically a womb in itself waiting to receive life. So what the command is given from the oversoul is that you need to start producing life, meaning you need to be a creator. So remember, the first gesture that has been given to us when we enter this world is go ahead and create. So we have to see the world as itself being a manifestation module, meaning the actual place where, if you understand, especially the ancient languages, the tones and the vibrations and the thoughts behind what you want, you can actually project that into this womb, this world, and it will begin to go through its generation process. It will begin to go through its incubation process. So let us be clear once again that our advent here into this womb was to create. And there is nothing more exciting than creating. Some have experienced that through children. Some have experienced that through companies. Some have experienced that through inventions or things in which you've created that you felt didn't exist before and that the world needed. So the creation component is one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable component here on this planet. So everyone was fascinated with creating. Now, instead of going to the beginning of time, which we kind of did the last show, and of course there was a show that that we did on Truth Frequency Radio, where I explain a lot of the greater details about what happened in the beginning of the ancient languages that were being used to create, and the individuals using those languages, and some of the mishaps they had in the trial and error of utilizing a language of power, which of course is a language where whatever you say begins to metamorphosize itself into physical existence, or 3D. But instead of going there, let us fast forward to the times of early man, in which husbandry was the primary job, meaning that how many cows, how many oxen, or cows and oxen being the same thing, but how much fruit that you can get from your items, product, your wife, your lot of land. All these things were a major component. So it shows you that right off the bat, people had an extreme fascination with the moon. Many people question what the moon's relationship to the Earth is now. Some people are even speculating that it could be possibly a spaceship or possibly inorganic. But the reality is that that is going too deep into what the moon is used for, because we'll actually see through this quest today exactly all of what the moon entails and what it's capable of doing. But from a basic level, without getting into deeper levels of spirituality now, you can see clearly that the waxing phase of the moon is the time in which things grow, meaning that when the when the moon is increasing in light, the energy that is associated with growth also increases. So this can be very easy to see by, one, most people that are attempting to grow their hair do not cut their hair on the waning of the moon cycle. They're instructed to cut their hair during the waxing of the moon cycle if you want your hair to grow. Farmers that plant crops don't really plant most crops, except for root crops, during the waning phase of the moon. They plant those crops during the waxing phase of the moon, because that gives strength to the crops. In addition to that, people saw this knowledge also applicable to their children, that in bringing a child into the world during the waxing phase of the moon, if it could be timed properly, also weaning a child from bad habits or things could be done during the waning cycle of the moon. So let's get it really clear. The power that was within the moon is increase or decrease. That was it. So if you wanted to take away something, then you would conduct that, some people call it ritual, during the waning phase of the moon. If you wanted to increase something, your crops, you would conduct that ritual during the waxing phase of the moon. So for the indigenous and the ancients, the moon was the key to them, because they had been able to identify that the moon had something to do with their prosperity or their loss. And this is also how the moon gets a dual character. Now, understand that everything on the binary world does have a dual character, even you. So what happens with the moon is that the moon was known to give life, fertility, abundance, etc. But it, on the flip side, was also known to be associated with death, the afterlife, and the ghost worlds, those kind of things. So you can see that all components here within our planetary system, also known as now Solomon, which just means the soul in the moon. So the sun and the moon. So Solomon's temple, of course, Sol being or soul being the Latin name for the sun. Solomon's temple means the universe. It means the temple of the sun and the moon, mainly the temple of the sun. So what is the temple of the sun? It's basically what you look at in the sky, because in our immediate solar system, of course, the sun is the largest celestial body. So the sun's temple is basically a configuration of the sun and its corresponding bodies. And this is important to understand now, because as we get further into this conversation, you'll see how many individuals have taken the soul and moon temples and brought them here on earth. And this is not foreign to what you read in your spiritual literature, especially within the Old Testament of the Bible and also the Quran. You see many temples are erected to actually give reverence to the moon and the sun, even though now there's a great lie being told that that's not what those temples were used for. Meaning Christianity attempts to pretend that its original temples and even its belief system was not structured based on astral theology. And Islam attempts to do the same, although it bears a crescent moon and a pentagram, which I was explaining, that has everything to do with the mental, physical, and spiritual realities and the geometry that correspond to them. So what you have is a great darkness that is pervading the land of individuals being basically instructed improperly on what the signs and symbols mean, as more people get caught up into the chosen people or my God can beat your God scenario. So let us just make it very clear. If God, who's actually very specific, we won't get into the etymology behind that name, is a father, then any father should never have a chosen child. What kind of father has a chosen child? Whatever child you bring forth, they're all your responsibility. So you cannot choose one over the other. We have now grown into a higher stage of maturity. This is also why in the Old Testament, the God that resides there and is present is known on an overall occult scale as the child, because much of the behavior, such as jealousy and even murder, even though, again, the commandments say thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not kill, but then God says you need to go and kill these people. You see, so which one is it? I can kill for you, but you say not to kill. So what happens is that there's an extreme level of confusion within the religions, because the entities in which are present in the religions today are themselves confused. And so this can be rectified when you access oversoul within self and refuse to be confused anymore and to start educating yourself. So for the record, people have to understand what you're seeing in the reality is first taking place within. So if you choose to go physically join confusion, it's because confusion is somewhere within. If you believe in something that is not the truth, that means that the truth is not within. So what you have the opportunity to do is to basically sit yourself onto a table, as I always say, like a surgeon, and you need to go into your organs, which also correspond as planets, and start lining them up properly. So remember, the major part of the astral quest is to mentally, physically, and spiritually get you tuned up. So let's continue here. Let me see what kind of images that I have related to or uploaded now. Okay, so it looks like most of the images that have been uploaded are going to be for the second half of our conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the knowledge. So what we have here is we have this situation going on. So now I'm going to go ahead and fast forward things here, because I've already taken you to the ancient times in which obviously the moon was in high reverence. The sun also had a component. In many cases, the reason why there's a constant confusion of whether these suns or moons are male or female is because most of them contain the dual component. As I told you before, they contain positivity and negativity. So with these two forces, you can bring life into an external world. So understand, that is why any duality really exists, whether it be male or female, etc. Also, to understand that the reason why the male and female component became so confused is that both male and female do have the ability to create. As, of course, the woman brings forth the child, the woman has a major fertility component, especially the feminine part of Earth has a major fertility component. It's seen as a tree that is bearing fruit. But also the male has a major fertility component as bringing the spark of life into the womb so that it can basically explode into the womb and begin to metamorphosize into its existence. So you have to understand also that the term, and it's a picture that I'm going to upload here for you, Kaaba means spirit or the spark of life and the soul of life. And if you're watching that live stream now, you'll actually see that come up. Actually, that's a specific time here. Yeah, it should come up immediately here. Yep, you'll see it right there. So what happens here is that even within Mecca, you see they have a Kaaba, which is shaped like a cube. Because a cube is the geometry that is based on a dynamo, or some people call it a Merkaba. So what they're really saying here is that in order to get life generated into 3D, you need the spark, which is basically like the electricity. If they showed you they fired electricity into a glass of ultra purified water, and then single cell life forms began to form, even though that water was ultra purified. And this is because through the spark of life, also called L as in electricity, it begins to create life. So you need that spark, and then you need the womb. So this is why both of these components could do little, if anything, without each other. A world with only men or a world with only women would not be a world at all. So we have to be very clear about not getting involved, especially in religious contexts that make you either prefer the masculine force or the feminine force. And of course, our religions today are divided within those forces. So also our body is divided within those forces. There's a masculine side of the body per se and a feminine side of the body per se. However, those two must come into union with one another in order to activate the system that is within the body. So really briefly, we'll discuss that the body has chakra centers all the way from the feet over, or actually even below the feet, all the way above the head. But these chakra centers are based on positive and negative poles and seen as wheels themselves. So as the positive and negative forces, if they're working in harmony and conjunction, then the wheel begins to turn. If they're not working in conjunction, then the wheel locks up. So in most individuals, because they're in a constant state of duality and even being encouraged to continue in the state of duality, their chakras remain locked and also in the upside down position to further confuse them. So what happens is that when you begin to free up a lot of the confusion and a lot of the misconceptions and a lot of the stagnant energy that is within your body, which all of that really causes, then you experience this energy moving through your body and then actually into your crown chakra region, and then it ankhs, which is what the original symbol of the ankh is about taking the energy back down into the body again so that it has an opportunity to go all the way down with these newfound energies and then create that same cycle again. And this creates a perpetual human. Humans were designed because of the integrity of the creators, nothing to do with what we've done and how great we are, etc. But to the integrity of the creators, the humans were designed to be perpetual, meaning our oversoul designed us here in 3D to be perpetual if we could unlock the mystery of that knowledge. And I gave people, of course, a hint to the mystery of many of the elements which are located in the amniotic fluid of a woman's sac. When the child has no lungs but still living, those elements can be found here on Earth. And so the EverQuest, i.e. Astral Quest, was really designed to allow us to discover that. So that's also what will be going on. I also want to let people know, as a sidebar here, how Astral Quest will work. It is a notification platform, meaning that there is not specific days that Astral Quest will come together. You will simply need to link your phone, your computer, your email address, or whatever device that you're actually using to the Astral Quest platform, which you can do there through Twitter or Facebook. And when an Astral Quest is about to launch, you will be notified at least within 1 hour. You can also go into the archives of each show and see what you may have missed if you may be engaged in some other topic. So let us understand that Astral Quest is a tool here for you to progress through real life. So although it may be very entertaining, let me cut this back on here before I have any sound problems. Although it may be very entertaining, let me, for a moment, I just need everyone to hold. I did have one of my major devices go on to a timeout. So let me just make sure that that doesn't affect our sound here. Okay, that should be rectified. Okay. All right, let me get back on the topic of where I was. Had a slight technical situation. Okay, so let us. Okay, so just to make sure that's clear, you have to sign up to Astral Quest in order to get those notifications, so that way you can progress through this quest in real time. So when we use the term "in the know," what, of course, that term means is that you can be put into the highest levels of knowledge the moment that they're available into 3D, at least from our channel. Of course, we're not saying that we're the only ones getting higher levels of knowledge, although it seems to be very rare that anyone can speak on these topics fluently and get a complete understanding of what's going on and also show other examples without collapsing within some type of spiritual paradigm. So, let's see here. Okay, awesome. Someone says it's still clear. Thank you for that also. Anyone that is able to notify me that everything is still going through clearly, it really helps, because I, of course, have to monitor this. I am in the studio by myself. It's really not hard, but it does allow me to make sure that everyone is getting this information clearly. And as I said before, there is a second half to this show. And in fact, when we take a break, you'll see a blank screen for a moment. Actually, I'll just leave it on so that way, I won't be here, of course. I'll have to go and take a little brief break. But in the second half of the show, what we'll be showing is some amazing things, if that hasn't already started already for many of you. So, awesome, clear in the Netherlands. I love it. Okay, so let's see here. Let's get back to my notes. I've actually started taking notes these days. Most people are very aware that I generally just freelance the whole thing because there's such an immense amount of information to cover. However, it's easier to put it into a curriculum-based format so that way people can really start to absorb it. However, remember, this was designed to be entertaining, so it's not going to leave you all the time with the mathematics and the specifics and the geometry and the stuff that you didn't want to study in school, but it's actually going to show, or if they were going to try to teach it to you, by the way, in the right way, but it's also really going to show you that this is entertaining, that there is specific knowledge that you need to know, but once you know that knowledge, then you're really, you have no limits. You're truly limitless. I've experienced this in my life. The main thing that bottlenecks us is the duality, because you have to understand that in the head, in this area is the corpus callosum. This area fires up, and this is why on the Last Airbender, yeah, Aang is showed with an arrow here, and this area is lighting up, but only in the final part of the movie where he has to accomplish all of the major feats. Because what they're saying is that in the corpus callosum, there's thousands or millions of neurons in this area, and what happens is that as you go through duality through life, they short circuit, meaning that the left brain cannot really communicate well with the right side of the brain. This means one side of the people in the world don't really communicate with the other side of people in the world very well. Mainly, all religions that are underneath the pentagram don't communicate very well with religions that are underneath the hexagram. This causes a short-circuiting within our reality to where we're burned out. Our DNA is basically suffering from an electric shock of the poles being confused. So what happens is that as you begin to work more through the real explanation of everything, a lot of the duality begins to subside and the harmonizing begins. So let's talk first about Egypt, because, of course, if you've noticed in the Code of the Matrix, I'm not a big fan of Egyptology and all of the gods and even the gods at all and their incessant ideas of having humans worship them. But I believe now that it's important for us to cover also what basically everyone else is doing in the reality, meaning that we may remain, as the Resistance does, in this ship, cruising through the universe and other universes, discovering things, but when we decide to land on Earth, which is where our anchor point is, this is not a mission that we're aborting, this is not a place that we're neglecting. When we come to Earth, we need to understand the systems and the structure that have been developed here over time. Now, I'm not saying that those systems cannot be changed and will not be changed, but what I'm telling you is for the last probably 6,000, 7,000, maybe even longer, for that period of time, we've been under a specific kind of information system. That system has a lot to do with Egypt, but of course, pre-Egypt is really Samaria, also Babylon. So basically, the customs of Samaria and Babylon and pretty much the Orient were, I won't say perfected, but were written and itemized in Egypt. So Egypt became the ultimate place for you to understand the spiritual components to the physical reality. However, with most cases, the reason why a person in ancient times went to Egypt was because they wanted to discover either one, what happens when you die, or two, what happened to a loved one that died. Now, of course, most people now will find that a parent, a child, a friend, or someone may die, and then once they rest in peace and they bury them, then they don't really inquire further about where they are. They just say, oh, they're with God now. However, back in the old days, because everyone was a lot more connected, and as I told you before, everyone was more like family, then when someone died, some individuals just could not accept that death, especially if it was someone that they were married to or someone that they had bequeathed their entire life to. So there was knowledge that always passed around to everyone on the organic communication system of word of mouth that, hey, you can go to Egypt and they know more about what could really happen after death or what happened to your dead friend or family member, etc. So a lot of people made pilgrimages to Egypt, and of course you can imagine Egypt itself being those pyramids, which are pyramids that correspond to the netherworld, being coated in gold. And their appearance as you were coming across the desert to actually see Egypt, which was then Kemet. So an advent to Kemet would leave you at some point in the desert looking at these colossal, not statues, but colossal structures made of gold in the distance. And as you drew closer, of course, during the sunlight, these pyramids would glow. So as you grew closer, you felt like you were getting closer and closer to the meaning of life and the meaning of the soul. So it's important for us to understand what was going on in Egypt in the beginning and then how that changed later on. So the first thing to understand is that what we call Egypt is divided into two sections, what's called Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. And the reason why I put it like this is because many people think that Upper Egypt is here and Lower Egypt is here. But in fact, Egypt is governed based on the flow of the Nile. And because the Nile flows a certain way, what is up here, or what when you see on a map and you see the top of it and you think, oh, okay, those pyramids where Cleopatra and Ramses and all those people were, it must be Upper Egypt because that was like one of the highest levels of civilization. That is not correct. Upper Egypt is actually Nubia, which is where you have Ethiopia, Somalia, or what's known as the Horn of Africa. So in those areas, the knowledge that was based on the higher levels of consciousness and spirituality, that's where that was trafficked in Nubia. And you also get this in the Sumerian text, where once the Sumerians supposedly land with now this new hyperdimensional role that they've gained from our current literature, then they immediately go to Kush, which is located in Nubia. So remember, Upper Egypt's down here, Lower Egypt's up here, okay? So that would confuse a person enough if they didn't know that. So in Lower Egypt, what was occurring is that the knowledge and the information of the earth is magical. That there is a physical correspondence to the netherworld, or the subconscious region of our being, aka the abyss. So because of that, as you see, Thoth is also known as the ibis bird, the knowledge of what goes on after you die was really conveyed to everyone there, anyone that sought to go and study under the Egyptian priesthood. However, at a certain point in time, probably very early, the knowledge in itself began to be corrupted by individuals who saw how much individuals depended upon this knowledge. And just a little bit of ego would make the individual attempt to transfer all the knowledge about all of us to them. And this is basically the birth of a slave god, aka a god king. And where one individual says, hey, I am the God over all of you, you bow down to me, I am Pharaoh, etc. So that's why also Egypt became synonymous with captivity, because after a while, no one could really figure out the knowledge anymore about the subconscious plane. And in fact, they seem to be more confined to what they learned there. And this now manifests to us in the physical world as when you go to spirituality, or religion actually, and you go to seek a higher level of spirituality, you probably come out more confused than you did when you went in, because the knowledge itself has been trampled upon. So let's get it very clear once more, that what the pyramids in Egypt actually do is they are jump points. Actually, they do quite a few things, but let's talk about it from just the level of understanding the subconscious spirit. The subconscious part of us remains inside, internal. And so structures were configured to give us the same geometry that was related to what could be going on internal. So of course you get four-sided pyramids, which when you compress them down upon each other equal basically the Merkaba and the pentagram combined in the geometry that is associated with that. And this is why if you take the pyramids, which are four sides, and of course for those that don't know, there is an equal pyramid underneath. So the pyramid itself is actually a diamond shape. So it's got four sides here, and if you actually pulled it out of the ground and you looked at it, it would be a cube. However, if you go into the mathematics of the pyramid and the slope itself, what you'll find is that it's actually configured to phi. So what the pyramid actually is an actual structure that encodes phi, or the pentagram, and the cube within one structure. And this is known as Solomon's temple, or the temple of the sun and moon. So remember, any structure, which we'll discover quite a few during the second half of this conversation, any structure that emulates the cosmic order is known as the temple of the sun and the moon. So let us go forward here. So now what you had in Egypt is you had these, what is the term I'm looking for? It's on the tip of my tongue. You had these, I find another word. But basically you had people that were responsible for guarding and teaching the knowledge of the afterlife. So what happened is that the fascination with the afterlife and what goes on the other side of things, the spiritual plane, was much more vast than what was going on in the physical reality. As we talked about, in the physical reality, all that is here is what has been unpacked, what we've bought seeds for. And of course, that's the secret to the ark. When you bring seeds into a three-dimensional reality, then they grow, and then that's when whatever the seed was makes it into 3D. So there are many things that have not made it here into 3D, but are still in the spiritual plane, waiting to be unpacked. So what happens is in Egypt, there began to be a high level of confusion about how many entities there really were in the other plane, and how could you really map out those energies. However, that came much later on. In the beginning, they knew that everything, they dictated that everything came down to basically 9 particular energies, which became known as the Enneagram. So let me go ahead and upload that image for everyone, because now you'll get the secret to 528, which is, everyone says, it's the frequency of love, it's the harmonic convergence, it's the frequency of God. But what 528 actually is on the Enneagram, and you'll see that now. On the Enneagram, 528, which is gauged by the solfeggio, which of course are the frequencies and the harmonics of a harmonic scale, the real ones, you get a convergence point at 528, meaning you actually get a marriage at 528 hertz. And so this is why, actually that image went a little bit lower than the Kaaba image. So I will, actually it went all the way to the bottom here. I'm going to make sure I time these properly. Let me see if I can go ahead and move that back to the top here. Specific time. Let's see here. See if I can move this image back to the top just so that it's there for everyone to see. That you'll see here the frequency 528, actually the solfeggio itself in the Enneagram, and then you'll see a harmonic convergence at 520, the number 528. Let me try that one more time. It's still not allowing me to, let me try 1152 here. Let's see if that'll work out. Okay, and then I have one more image here to upload for those that are following along. And this image also relates to 528. Okay, for some reason I can't move that image all the way to the top, but now I at least have it about two or three more images down. And also I have another one here. Let's see. Harmonic convergence. Okay, so what you get is you get this harmonic convergence at 528, which is of course the mystery behind 528 hertz. And the reason why it was so important for many individuals to map out where this convergence came in at is because that was known to be like the navel of the world. Like this was where 528 is showed to be the actual harmonic point, or the birth of all the frequencies coming together. And there's a lot of knowledge showing that that area may be where the Kaaba is actually located, and that's why that's called the navel of the earth, or the center of the earth. And of course the navel is the center of your body. And let me get to back to my notes here. Okay, we're actually about... Okay, all right, let's do this actually. Let me go ahead and take a brief break here. I didn't know that we were already an hour within the conversation, or an hour and some change. Let me see here also. Okay, it looks like everyone is still loud and clear. So yeah, what we're going to do here, we're going to take a brief break. I'm going to organize a few of my notes and to make sure that we can come back into the program with revealing the information of what's going on in Egypt, and then how that ended up manifesting into the Western world. So when we come back, what we'll talk about is how the ancient Egyptians basically made a straight line to California, or the land of the West, the place where the sun sets, because after the degradation of the knowledge that was within Egypt, many of the individuals that were there took the knowledge literal and began to migrate to the furthest point west, which is actually for them California. And later on, we'll find the Egyptian mysticism and Egyptian system being incorporated into Hollywood and even being conveyed to us in definitely a distorted way, and it governing a lot of how we perceive the mental, spiritual, and physical world based on knowledge that resonates with us on an entirely different level, but explained to us on a very defunct low level, in low degree. So what you'll experience also, just to let everyone know that is tuning into live stream, you'll experience a brief interruption. Basically, the screen will be blank. And then when we come back, there will be another live stream that will start on the top of that. So this video will be archived, so other individuals that want to go back and listen to it can do so. And then a new one will begin. So when we come back, like I said, we're going to begin the next level of this expansion. I wanted to say wholeness and balanced vibration to everyone. Also, thank you for tuning in. In addition to that, I just ask that everyone bear with me as I begin to get familiar more with this system and also in being live. And of course, towards the end of today's conversation, we'll be answering some calls. We actually, the people who are on live stream, I will let you know, won't be able to hear what those callers are asking. So do be aware of that. But again, when we come back, we'll go ahead and take some calls. So if you would like to call in, the number is area code 347-996-5688. That's 347-996-5688. Then you can press 1, and then I'll see a notification that you've actually called in. So we're going to go ahead and start some hold music here. See. And we'll be returning back to the show in about 5 minutes. Okay, we're forward, and what everyone should be seeing now is that live stream has gone live again, and you would also see an archive of the first part of the show. So this, of course, is the best part, is that we have an opportunity to have actually a recording, a video recording that people can post up on their YouTube and use in different ways to educate people. So everyone keep in mind that I didn't have as much time today and yesterday and really all this week to put the actual show side together as well as I would like to. I had to do more of the technical work over the week. So I will tell everyone now that if you keep tuning in, you'll get all the information in the proper order, which is really what I'm concerned about right now. Even though I have a particular order here, I really would not like to match my conversation to, you know, how this exactly is put together. So let me do this. I'll go ahead and just start this in order, because what I have to now do, I guess the task that I'm burdened with, is explain to you how it all went into the wrong direction. Because a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, so you're telling me that the encoding of phi within the pyramid, and that we had already discovered the great arcanum, the great panacea, what can make a crippled person climb trees, what can make a crazy person sane, what can make an individual that is demon possessed be completely pure. We already had that, and then somehow something went haywire. Because that's not what I'm experiencing. See, there's a lot of people that will talk to you about all sorts of stuff, but we're still here in a physical reality where we have babies in Gaza that are suffering. Like, so what is really going on here? Like, have we really discovered what is happening? And so this is also why my advent here is necessary, because I have to actually explain to people what is going on. And it's not an easy task, but I have been given the ability to do it. Now it's going to the next level. So as you can see, when you raise yourself to a higher frequency, the individuals that are on the frequencies of the harmonic wavelength here, they can't come close to you anyway. It's a frequency situation. the universal laws, which can't be broken. So, if the only way they can affect you is if you come here. Now, here's also what happens. Many individuals, and let me check my sound here before I go too far into this. People, if you could, okay, someone said loud and clear. Thanks, Daraj. So, what happens is if you come here, real quick this. Sorry, I have some technical situations going on here with the equipment that just allows me to see what you're seeing. But if you decide to come here, and you're, again, a higher harmonic being, you still always have the ability to go here again. So, it's important for everyone to know that now what's happening is that many of the energies that generally remain on these type of harmonics are coming into the physicality and coming into this plane now because of the situation of the bottlenecking. Because now some people were immediately saying, well, does he mean that some people are higher than us, or he's higher than us? Or no, what I'm saying is that all these beings that are even high, they need to go like this. You see? Like they have to do this, and if for some reason there's a kink, whether it's on the low level or the high level, how you see it, then it has to be moved out of the way. And so there's a heavy, heavy agenda to put humanity in the know, to tell them exactly what's going on. So I'm going to start that. First picture going live is called the Temple of Solomon, which we were talking about earlier. And so what you have going on is the Temple of Solomon gives you the ability to square the circle. And that image has now gone live. And with the ability to square the circle, this means that the globulous form that needs to be perfected, which is called existence, is shaped by the geometry that is being used here. So what happens is that if at any point that someone takes this knowledge and then utilizes it in a way in which is against life, we're all going to be affected. And so what has continuously been uncovered by our network is that there are individuals that are erecting structures such as these microcosmic Temple of Solomons. I'm going to give you a good example of a microcosmic Temple of Solomon here, the Millennium Dome, and the geometry behind the Millennium Dome. There you are. This one I got to go all the way to the top. I figured out the setting for that. Again, we're working through a lot of the technical stuff. So what you literally witness here is you witness that the Millennium Dome is 365 meters in diameter, which is 365 days, 52 meters in height, which is 52 weeks, 12 mass, which is 12 months. Okay, so these kind of microcosms within the microcosm are creation zones. So what you have is that the inside of Egypt, I'll give you the whole story here, you find a lot of obelisks. One of them was called Cleopatra's Needles, because these obelisks are like needles that do acupressure to the earth to guide the energies. Right? This is a simple system that was learned from the Orient. Look at the Oriental medicine. That's all it consists of, all the different points. So what happens here is that when you take needles and you put them in the points, then you can channel the energy. And this is why in games, now I'm loosening up a little bit here. Like before I was like, oh, technical difficulties everywhere, trying to maintain the sound. Here we go with the games, which is based on the geometry of life. And this is what makes us start playing life as a game. Because all around us, As you see the geometry to soccer, 11 versus 11 in football, 11 versus 11. This is why everyone's seeing 11, 11 everywhere. 11 plus 11 is 22. 22 is the Sephiroth. Like, now you're dealing with magicians that are using the 22 program and the geometry that unlocks mental, spiritual, physical vehicles in order for them to insert it. Now, of course, a great deal of the core firmware of what we need to operate is what we have to just stay cohesive and anchored properly into our realities. We have multiple realities as hyperdimensional beings. So what becomes most important is that they utilize these anchor points that mean a lot to us, like, these globes and, this kind of geometry that's based on the physical version of the correspondence of our spiritual self. And so what happens is that when anyone is allowed to tap into that programming, meaning some of the individuals that are tapping into the programming are not upstanding people, meaning that you have people experimenting in laboratories with frequencies to see what they can play on commercials to make more money in the background so a person can't hear it. You have them utilizing the knowledge not to boost us into the higher level of our existence, to build our cities in the sky on magnets and give Earth and take pressure off Earth and use it as what it's always done, is to produce oxygen. They're doing it, of course, all wrong. But now I have to explain to you why are they doing it wrong? How are they doing it wrong? Okay. So what they did was, because Egypt corresponds to the netherworld, it's the subconscious mind. Okay? It's basically where you go when you go to sleep. So what happens is that the subconscious mind was only in one part of the world because the beings that were known to exist there slept. They were in subconscious state projecting the entire world. And this is what they call the Enneagram, or the 8 gods. There's Brahma's in meditation. He's not running around at the mall. So these beings projecting the earth through their mind was a particular center that when you went to that center to connect, you could connect. It meant if you made it there through all the caravans and the wilds of the desert, if you made it there, it meant you were meant to be there. You look at the book of the Abramelin and the Mage. He begins in his whole journey is like confusion and him going into the desert and getting lost. So what I'm trying to show you here is that this type of stuff supersedes all of what you're playing with now. It supersedes all of what you're doing at this current moment, and it behooves you to sit down for a moment and say, okay, let me listen to what is really happening. So, the geometry, as I told you, is being used to construct microcosmic temples. Here we go. There's another live stream post. It's called Streets of Washington. Those streets. This geometric configuration, if you saw this on your hyperdimensional star map, you would already know what you were dealing with right there. And people do need to tune into live stream. For those that may have just tuned into, I'm sure there's some notifications going off. For those that may be tuning into Blog Talk Radio, they may not know that we're also on live stream. You're getting visuals on this, just in case you don't know. And I'm sure someone can source you the link. But what you're looking at here is a pure negative energy dynamo, because the star is inverted. So, what happens with this kind of stuff is that you have crowds of individuals in stadiums, and then you have them through the games being opened up, the sport, serpent ports. And then you have this conflict being put inside of him, the bear versus the leprechaun. And then what this continuously does is create these wars throughout all the gates of your body. And then so your whole body, which is the actual plane of, they said the plane of Aranja, is in battle. Now, what I was also trying to show is that these battles and these conflicts, this generation does create energy, and it is actually the reason why we're here. So it actually makes a person ask the question, is there a constructive battle? Have we actually misinterpreted battle in itself even as advanced human beings and, light beings, as some people call themselves, and say, well, no, there's only love. Well, wait a minute. These components that are necessary to have in the physical reality to generate things go beyond just one word, especially that's 4 letters. That's how we have to look at things now, especially that mean Jove. So we're now challenged with looking at the entire gambit of everything. Let me tell you how this happens also. Because when you're in this physical reality and you start seeing things go on, and you start asking yourself the question truly of why is it going on and who's involved, you start understanding that you're just as lost as everyone else. Even if you're supposed to be smart, you're supposed to be rich, you're supposed to be all these different things, but you're still lost. You don't even understand the language is written in the sky. You're on the language, you're on a program. These folks are around building microcosmic universes all over the place to just make you want to come and be a part of their little small world. See, that's all it really is that they make a microcosmic universe and they put you in it. That's why it shows man, which is again, man and woman the same. They both have man in the name. So this is what we're talking about, both of us. Suspended on the pentagram. In the womb, remember this pentagram is the womb, but suspended in the pentagram with having to understand time. So this is the major thing that we're going to talk to people about now. And I'm talking about all of you that are out there. You have to start talking to people about time and how long this may go on. Like, there is no end to this according to this geometry. This is called an endless knot. This means that the way that the sport in the game is configured is that you would always be here. And then each time you would get plunged into another microscopic world without ever probably having the ability to create one yourself. What I'm telling you is that I'm not demonizing this information. What I'm telling you is that the geometry and the designs and the architecture and the things behind this, just as being a poison in a small dose, can in fact be the cure. That being able to explain to people exactly what is going on based on everything that they're seeing around them may in fact wake them up. Let's go to some images here. Now, the Egyptians, here's what also happened now. To get back into the story, in Egypt, so there was a particular group, mainly the Kemits, who were generally dark in skin tone, and Naga. So they were responsible for managing this whole dream world. And some people say, oh my goodness, the reptilians are controlling everything. Listen, the people that were originally there are not even there anymore. They've been uprooted. So the control modules that were there are being manned by someone else. The individuals that were first manning them are not on that anymore. This is why you see so many things like the Conan and all the different cartoons, the G.I. Joe. You see all this where they're battling the serpent because they actually unseated the serpent gods from Lemuria to take control of the entire ship. See, some people don't even realize where they're actually at, but the reality, this world is a ship. And it was being controlled. And then arose up one who they call now Cain and challenged the ones that were previously at the control module who they call Lemurians. Cain in the city of Atlantis, Lemurian in the Nagas. Now, this is such a hodgepodge. You have colonization where you have Lemurian Nagas in the same body. And this is ultimate conflict, which the universe is like, yes, perpetualness. See, you're inside of something, and that's why there's a nighttime. You're inside of something that still works on certain principles. The more you conflict and not harmonize, you're still the feet part of the universe. You're giving it that motion, that piston motion to keep its movement. There will always be individuals doing this. And different kind of entities and beings doing this. The question is for you, are you going to do it? And two, if you're going to do it, are you going to be in full control of your energy? See, the other thing about this conflict it's actually the point of harmonizing. So once you become harmonized, there's an energy release. Actually, I'm sorry, it's not release, it's contained within, harmonized. But what happens in the physical reality is that they juice you. This is the term juice. They juice your energy, and then it goes into these meridians, and then it's collected somewhere, mainly in the temples. That's it. So, of course, it may take this world like maybe 70, 80 more years if someone else doesn't start speaking up and people don't start connecting together and people don't start seeing how serious our network is and how much we really have to deliver, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't start happening. You know, it could be endless to how long we get the reaction. However, I'm happy to tell you that's not going to happen. We all today prove that we're already in play. The message has already gone out. It's live. People understand what they did to continue. It's in Egypt. Once the usurpers come, Hittite Iberians, these, Hittite Iberians are very difficult to deal with the Phoenician language and the rest of what they want to do, need to seize the controls with Atlantis and all of the 6 kings of Dagobert behind them. Like, they had already convinced pretty much most of the larger parts of the Orient, and the Chinese being very susceptible to a lot of their trinkets, to just be with them. So in going into this next transformation, what you found is a complete upgrade to the Matrix. I mean, after the Lemurian Empire crumbled and the Atlantean Empire rose out of the sea, Atlantean technology started being used, mainly computer, which is actually like a Sumerian word. So the computer, again, speeds up reality, speeds up knowledge. Everything starts to move faster. But what if the beings that are inside of this cube, as it's moving faster, as they're wanting to shape the world now into a cube by building these temples everywhere? What if you inside of it need to gain some bearing? Like, I'm telling you now how to really emancipate yourself from the situation where you have this physical body, like I do, physical body, and you have your spirit body, but you have full control of that, just like I have full control of my physical body right now, and I always will. Full control of your spirit body, so that way when you go to sleep, you're not drifting off into like some other space, some channel of energy. So let's keep going here. So the knowledge that was being managed by the Lemurians, like some people, they have mixed opinions that were about what was going on in the Lemurian Empire. But it's very clear based on the structures. Most of the individuals that were confined to the Lemurian empires, which were in Angkor Wat and also in Egypt, the major control centers, also Aztec, you see that name, Tech, which means advanced technology. These temples, you can see now, were being manned by individuals that were utilizing the sheer labor of their masses, which actually were their children also, to build these monuments of heaven on earth. So, of course, now look, Lemurians were fascinated with building these same structures, especially mapped out constellations to Orion. They love to build these structures, and the Egyptians love to do the same thing, even though these are the two different empires. And this is what I call also white and black. This is what you figure out in Star Wars, that really the one who's mastering the good side and the bad side is the same person. The white and the black are the same. They're so polarized that they cause each other's problems. You have to be full spectrum. White and black are not colors on the spectrum. They're actually the absence of colors. So you have these two conflicting forces who will forever, it's like they call it one. These two conflicting forces that will never agree with each other, because the first real state is something that is not supposed to be written, which is the zero. And to ever return to that, we have to fully define one. The first one who came first. Who came into the womb first? Who was the first human here? Like now that we have it in math, like I said, you keep going back through genealogies. But let's keep going here. I'm going to see if I can extend Astral Quest today because I'm really liking this, and I have quite a few things to get into. But this thing is timed. And let me see if I can edit the event and push it out a little bit. Of course, this would also mean anyone on Blog Talk Radio would have to tune in to live stream. It shows that you have about 4 minutes to do that. Yeah, I'm not going to take any calls today just because I have a lot to push out here, and it was, you know, a little bumpy in the beginning, especially with technical difficulty. So I want to make sure that this first level of knowledge gets translated properly. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to bump this out a little bit here. Because either way, I just don't want it to cancel itself because it's obeying the instructions that I gave it. Okay, so here we go. You know, these computers. Once you really understand what these things are really about, you already realize that the world has some big decisions to make. Even having devices such as the computer in realities automatically equals certain things because of the geometry in the numbers of a computer, which are 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. As the show goes on, of course, we'll be revealing a lot of what that means. And for everyone, I just need them to hold for just a second longer. All right, here. Okay, so I had to say all of that, especially about the previous controllers of Egypt, or what was Kemet then, because there's a lot of still conflict within both races, mainly the black man and the white man. And then black man wants Lemuria to come back so he could basically do the same thing that he was doing before, which is what you basically see Rick Ross and Jay-Z doing. Like those are the Kabbalistic names that correspond to what is called R, A-R. And how you turn the R, which is the pentagram, determines everything of what you become. Meaning that once you understand the secret to time, which is within the pentagram, if you just invert, meaning that if you somehow don't understand it properly, you try to use it for something for your own gain, you rapidly go in the wrong direction. That's why the pentagram is also known as the hammer, Thor's hammer, okay? Now notice with the whole myth of Thor's hammer, only Thor can pick it up, right? This means only a god can pick it up. So if an individual tries to utilize the knowledge behind the pentagram, and by the way, Blog Talk Radio is cutting off, for those who attempt to utilize the knowledge of the pentagram and don't have that real connection of the truth inside of themselves, it only fast forwards their own destruction. And this is what you're seeing further into the destruction. Also, I do want to let you know that in the ancient text, it doesn't really document how low you can go and how high you can go. This was what the thing that was so puzzling about the abyss and why it could not be mapped, like the O. That they would attempt to scale it through experiences, but no one could really say they knew everything. So remember, in this world, there's very few people that will even say something like that, but no one really knows everything. You can continue to expand and you can continue to find out things, especially when you're using the system of truth. But exactly how far it really goes, man, you need to be moving really, really fast to be able to move that kind of expanse. And so this is also why it's important to not play around with the ego, especially in the beginning of your spiritual ascent. Because utilizing any of this energy, and you got to understand that knowledge and information is energy, but utilizing any of it really fast and not with care creates certain situations. When you put time and attention into what you do, and this is why most things that were made a long time ago had, I think some here, most things that were made a long time ago had a lot of craftsmanship to it and last a lot longer. And this was because you see that a lot of time and attention was put into it. But now you see things made very fast. And so when people get this kind of knowledge and the knowledge of the world, they immediately went into error with it. especially the new generations. This is also why, but you see people that have a lot of wealth in abundance because, of course, the pentagram is tied into the circle is tied into time is tied into how fast things grow. If you can speed up how fast things grow, then you can speed up how fast things prosper. If you can build small microcosmic versions of those and then speed up everything inside of that microcosm. In addition to that, people notice time is moving a lot faster, days are getting shorter. This is because there is an attempt to, what you're seeing the societies are doing is they're building these microcosmic things everywhere so that eventually they all connect. And that Earth becomes this new world that is designed but shaped and molded. Okay? So that's something that is being planned. So we'll see how that really plays out for humanity, because I still believe that inside of every single individual there's this phenomenal being, and what it takes to actually bring that out may be, to me, truth. Person gets the truth to things, then it all starts to make sense. Then they start getting mature. Then you start seeing, well, wait a minute, I'm not in a situation where like everyone is really looking out for me and looking for my best interest. In fact, it doesn't appear like many people even know what's going on. Then when they come close to it, they start fighting each other, and then they want power themselves. Then, you know, it all goes back into the opposite direction again. You can't tell one from the other. So now you get a chance to tell one from the other within yourself. It's not about now you going to someone else for what you need. It's now time for you just to get the core way of how it works. And then, like I said, if you want to follow along with the Astral Quest adventure, then you're more than welcome, but you'll know what's going on in this reality, and then you'll see it everywhere. For instance, if you see these pentagrams everywhere, they're on the flags, they're on all decorations, they're everywhere. Does that just mean that that's what everyone likes to see, or that possibly that symbol means something else? So, of course, in the physical reality, we see it so much because it does mean something else. It does mean phi, and that is the creation of the world, physically. Then the dimension adjacent over, which I'm yet to still determine is organic, once, you know, breaking out of this cube. So notice, here's another thing that you need to think of. If you have this, this globulous being, which is obviously sentient, it doesn't really need to be messed with. It doesn't need to be affected at all. It's already perpetual. It's made by an entirely different designer. It's only when you start putting it into the limitations that you have some situations. Now, of course, the body is the limitation. It is the governor of our powers and abilities. And that's why when we go to sleep, many individuals come out of the body, because the body is asleep, so now you can escape its trap. But by day, you're now functioning in the physical body, but you're also on the outside of that, start thinking about something beside yourself. For you to be here, you're also in a physical reality that has the same geometry. And so what the picture that I just posted is the Osiris and Isis hex and pentagram, hexagram and pentagram, because the keys in the Egyptian text were between basically these two deities every time. But you understand it deeper when you connect it to these symbols, because then you'll see how they're using it in Hollywood and how they're using the rest of the place. Now, of course, Isis number is 5. And that number equals a pentagram. That pentagram is also symbolized by an apple. The reason is because when you cut an apple in half, and I wish I had that picture. Somebody probably can post it there with the link or in the chat. When you cut an apple in half, it's exactly 5 seeds in it. Go Google it. So what happens is that symbols of the apple, like i.e. the Big Apple or New York, are basically largely configured pentagrams, like this kind of geometry spread out all over the territory. And so this is how matrices and micro matrices and illusionary matrices and all this stuff is projected, because, and this now gets me back to the original anchor point, what was decided is once the individuals who invaded Egypt got a hold of the knowledge and that star, which is now of course the icosahedron or the hexagram, that's the symbol of the knowledge of Egypt, is the hexagram. Once they got that, which is dictated in the Bible when Moses plundered the Egyptians and he took all of what they had, meaning their knowledge and their wisdom, and then he left and went with it to Canaan, which is CNN, which is the king. And then now they're there, and then they use the masculine symbol, which is the icosahedron, and then they have the rest of the world under the feminine symbol, which is the pentagram, which is the dodecahedron, because the rest of the world chooses to be physical, never and fleshly, never understanding that icosahedron boys are running around. Benny Or are running around, sons of gold. Like, our reality is structured on oil and gold. Gold first. Why? What is it so special about gold, and why is gold that corresponds to the soul? What is the great arcanum and the alchemy really about behind that? When you understand that alchemy, what you understand is it is about ingesting elements into the body, because that's the physical vehicle you have, a mouth, a gate, ingesting many types of substance, taking it, put it into their monatomic state in order to gain their abilities. Like, this is again what the ones who have already come in possession of the knowledge, we don't even need to speak of what their stance is. Like, if I say, oh, the squanderers and the ones who use it now, that's not going to get anything done. I'll be running around here like Alex Jones. The reality is that you should just understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, mainly how they're doing it. Okay? So let's go to the next picture here. All right, we're going to get into Oscar for a little bit, a little Hollywood side, because it may be getting a little too heavy for everyone. It's like, wait a minute, but I don't think so. I think the Resistance audience now, man, we've gotten really strong. There's been a lot of expansion within our network. So what happens is that now I just recently posted a picture, which everyone I'm sure saw by now that's tuned in, but it was a picture of the Babylonian gate in Iraq and how that gate is exactly in a straight line to the same corresponding gate of Ishtar in Hollywood. Okay? So what happened is that once these individuals that came into Egypt came under control of the modules, the obelisks, the languages, etc., they sought to spread the netherworld, which was the subconscious state, over the world like a web. So remember, in the beginning, the world was designed where the subconscious state, the subconscious place was in one place. These individuals decided they wanted to spread it. This is by putting these more pyramids and instructing people to build more pyramids. Okay? This would make basically subconscious gates everywhere, but more than anything, I asked the question, is there only supposed to be one subconscious place in this world because that's like the gate out and those gates not be everywhere? But this is real talk. This is what's happening. The gates are everywhere now. But before, they were just in one place. So what happens is that the entity, because there's, of course, hyperdimensional beings involved. This is what I understand as Morgan, the family of the dead. Mor does mean black, but that's not a skin tone thing. Morgan, meaning the family of the dead, were the ancestors. If you notice, even in most ancient traditions, they worship ancestors. So to say the family of the dead, meaning those who had died means to split into two, meaning those who had split into two from the physical body, they had left and went into the spiritual world. So the other thing about the whole Atlantean-Lemurian conflict was, just like in Star Wars, there seemed to be another being that was really running things, while the two sides, or the two brothers, or the two sides of the moon, basically, kept fighting each other. So when I look more, especially to the possibility that that may be going on, I get way more answers, because you actually uncover the involvement of a hyperdimensional entity. That's the other news flash to Earth, which I'm, of course, having to tell everyone, is that there appears to be a few hyperdimensional entities on the planet already that are very advanced, and they've actually been here for quite some time. Many people have emancipated these kind of situations. Many other galactic entities have already emancipated themselves out of situations of the individuals that are conducting these kind of things on our planet. Actually, us getting getting into a level of actually releasing ourselves from that situation becomes a major part of how we earn our rank, for better lack of words, in the rest of the universe. Okay, so what we have here is that now one energy, mainly babble, which means like what a baby does, you know, blah, blah, blah. You don't understand what a baby's saying. One energy is generally used to confuse people. It's called babble. It's within the language. It's the confusion of tongues. It's when the hyperdimensional entity that I'm referring to said, I'm going to go down and confuse the tongues. So what we have to understand is that on our planet, because we're utilizing this language, it has become something that if we don't understand, then we remain forever entwined in a net. Because the energy of this net, and this is now what you can think of it, has been shot out like an arrow with a net over it, over certain areas. And that's why, of course, in the Bohemian Grove it says, you know, spiders weave not thy webs here, or brothers weave not thy webs here. This means that don't project those negative web fields over anyone that's here. You can do it to everyone else, though. You see what I mean? So these are the kind when the knowledge was then sold, meaning the ancient knowledge of Egypt was brought into a format in which even a layman could understand, and then he could be sold it. That's when more corruption of the knowledge took place, because then you had real negative individuals now finding the fertility component. And so that's what this is also really about, is the knowledge of the fertility component. I'm publishing now an Oscar, because we just recently had some award ceremony going on. To understand that where this gate actually is where they receive these Oscars. So this Oscar, or Osiris's car, and we already know the car is a vehicle. So Osiris's car, let me get one more image up here, is actually a Templar. There we go. It's up there. It's actually a Templar, Art Deco Knight. So what happens is that you have a particular group of individuals that are giving out all of the media that's come from Hollywood. And everyone knows this, of course, but they don't know the finer details, which is important because realistically, you're dealing with magicians. And this is why it's about the holy wood to them, or the Hollywood. Which they got one L, it's the holy wood. Now, the myth of this entire structure of the holy wood is this. Of course, that Osiris's body was split into 14 pieces. This means that 14 pieces of Egypt were taken from Egypt. Okay? When Egypt was plundered. These pieces were then spread in different places around the globe. But the main piece, the control module, which where they call it the phallus, but let me show you the geometry. Let's see here. Here it is. The main piece, also the wand, the holy wand, remained in one place, which is the place where, as I told you earlier in the conversation, that the Egyptians decided to make a migration right from where they were in a straight line to California, and to set up things there, to spread the web, but to control it from there. And so the subconscious level of the netherworld was then spread through the world, through these 14 pieces, 14 obelisks. As you see now, most of the ancient and indigenous shrines and things have been taken down and all put in the Louvre. Then all these new monuments and different what do you call them? I can't look for the word, but anyway, all these new things start popping up. You see all these new statues that are being put up in places where old relics used to remain, because those are still the same points. And here's how, first of all, as a sidebar, here's how the ancient people ended up discovering these energy centers, by the way. It didn't take for the conquerors to have to find all the ley lines themselves, but they did have the ability to do that because they generally themselves had the ability of the pentagram and the compass and the knowledge behind the precession of Venus. But what these individuals would really, really get involved with, as you can see them spreading this Egyptian system around the world, is getting involved in fertility. The fertility is the money. So this is why television, computers, media, all this stuff is the highest level of money transfer. Like, money doesn't even transfer unless you even know where to transfer the money. Who gives you the commercial? Who brings all this stuff to you? Who is syndicating? Who is giving the right to speak to everyone? You see what I mean? So that's why you also see your opportunity to expand completely, because now it's already been deemed that the people that are controlling the situation are releasing control. That it's imperative for humanity to figure out what's going on because they are totally defunct at figuring it out. Them unlocking the ancient knowledge, as you see right now, I'm explaining to you on TV today, only meant the realization that if you really start playing around with this and you're not on a high level of existence, you're going to start causing a chain reaction of bad things happening to you. So most of the controllers that have touched this stuff and done negative things are in a heavy level of spiral at this point that is basically making them even a vampire. So what happens is for humanity is why the ship is now, like I said, in the Atlantean Lemurian situation, the controls were being wrestled for. Now the controls have been let go. Both forces have deemed there's nothing that we can do. It's all chaos. It's about to collapse. That's why all the spiritual books also are like that. In the end, oh, it's chaos and destruction. In the Quran, oh, there's going to be hell and perishing. Okay, this means that they've let go of the controls. We can't do anything. Grab the controls. If there's anything that I'm telling you today as I'm trying to explain the itemization of what these superstitious Egyptians were doing, you have to be able to grab the control of your own ship too in physical reality and say, okay, I'm going to access these levels of knowledge so that I can understand what's going on, but I'm not going to allow this to hold me here. It's going to be basically Earth graduated. I'm going to learn the positive and the negative forces, and also when one takes too much of one or the other. So what you had is that you had these obelisks because the deity in Egypt had this ability from its fourth dimensional plane to cut obelisks and to inscribe them. And this is only shown in the Bible one time, even though in the ancient books it's done several times. In the Bible, you see when Moses goes to the mount that supposedly God inscribed the 10 Commandments on this stone with his finger. And then the people got a little bit further enough to find out that that was possibly the emerald tablets. What it's actually saying is the actual language itself is so powerful that once it's written or engraved into anything, if you had a third eye, you would see it light up. So this is the ancient language, the one that we were removed from. Remember, the confusion of Babylon is to remove us from the original language, the original tones. But I'm now speaking of the original tones and the original keys. So let me go further into, again, what happens with these keys is that they're like MEs, which according to the Sumerian texts are the actual programs themselves for how to control the reality. Of course, when you get on a hyperdimensional computer, you need to know what the keys say and how they work. And you need to be able to intone the proper thing to guide the ship. So how they solved that situation is that the Morgan, or the family of the dead, at some point transcribed the codes to the mothership, basically, how to guide Earth. So, in addition to that, later on, as some begin to inquire about other things, and this is why they talk about Aleister Crowley and Crowley going into creating this entire network of dark occultism so they can get in contact with another being. Because when they got in contact with some of the ones on our timeline and wavelength, a little bit further above and backwards, was only instructions about how to guide the ship and how to keep us alive. But there were some that wanted to talk to other things. That was the first interest. And today, I don't know if we're going to be able to go through this whole thing and looking at time, but this is the Astral Quest premiere. So Okay, so when you see this, so when you see what you had going on is that the hyperdimensional being would then inscribe onto these obelisks. They would take basically raw stone into the Holy of Holies. And then they would leave it there. And then when they would come back, there would be an obelisk carved with the engraving of the ancient language. And then they were told, take this obelisk to here. Then when they would take this obelisk, because they had, you know, of course, the Egyptians, the later on Egyptians were really the Phoenicians, the seafaring people. They would take these obelisks and put them in other places. And this would start to put everyone under this trance. I'm explaining to you again, as I promised, why it appears that a lot of people, especially if they're not awake, are under some type of illusionary trance. It's because the devices from the netherworld have been spread out over the planet. These devices can be deactivated on a microcosmic and a macrocosmic level, meaning an individual can spiritually deactivate these devices within themselves and wake up. This is something that you just do by hearing the knowledge. I'm not telling you there's some particular point and some particular meditation. I'm telling you the real truth emancipates you from this system that you may not even understand at this point, but you will. Okay, so as the obelisk spread out, as you see, there's obelisks even now being carried around. One was just recently carried around out of the United States into somewhere else because now apparently the United States is losing that obelisk. So there's a change of energy even going on in the United States. So, but the main component or point was the fecundity component. This means that there was something. We're not saying that it's necessarily a phallus, but there was something that was very similar to the control module for all these obelisks. And this piece was known as the phallus symbol because everything is set up as a universal diagram. Of course, one of the most important, or the most, actually not one of the most important, the most important portion of the male body is the phallus, of course, because there's no life with no phallus. So that was taken into Hollywood, and that became known as the Hollywood or Holy Wood. Then anything that was created there, even if it didn't make any bit of sense or was even entertaining, like if you look at TV today, it's just not entertaining, it made it still abundant. Because what this knowledge does is it's a passive knowledge, and this is also what I want to explain to people. It's a passive knowledge, but to a being with an ego, it does a destructive job in the sense of giving them every single thing that they want. But if they've always wanted dark things from watching other individuals do dark things, it creates a perpetual situation. So any person getting a hold of high levels of spiritual knowledge in the past were already really looking at wizards and messiahs and all sorts of individuals around them, and they only took that as an example. Now it's time to set a higher bar for what exactly it means to not only be spiritual, but also what it means to be a human being. And again, the beginning of that comes with us metamorphosizing this reality. So understand what an Oscar actually is, to get back to that, is a Templar standing in a pentagram. And that picture is uploading now. So that's on the base. And this is the geometry behind that, which just updated now. So you in the womb, what's going on? Are you going to awake in the womb and get ready to go into your next transition? We're going to end this here. We're going to end this here now only because we've run really far into the time, and then plus I would really like to get this this show put together in another way because there's tons of images here, and I uploaded everything into the platform. And let me go ahead and just give you guys what's here now. There was I did also upload that straight line of going into from Egypt to Hollywood. And let's see here. Let me upload that immediately. Like I said, I do appreciate everyone being here while I deal with working this this platform out. But trust me, that there's so much more to go. I mean, I'm actually a little exhausted. I've been up for quite a few hours, I think about 2 days, and just moving things around. And of course, there was a lot of things going on in the physical reality especially down in Miami. So, you know, there's just lots of stuff going on. The resistance is always active. At this point, you know, it's really, it's in the full cycle here for us. Like a lot of people say, well, it's up here for us. From here, it's up from here. No, it's fully cycled from here. Like I'm going to finish telling you the story, and I'm going to compress it a little bit. So this is what you had. So once these Hittites and the Iberians, who had their own desires, wanted to contact their own father, got into the area that they knew, everyone still knew that the area contained the knowledge about that kind of stuff. Once they got there, they decided to take the knowledge and put it into the physical reality. This birthed what they call the time of Prometheus even giving fire to man. This means that even the knowledge of how the language was configured was given. Meaning that the first set of information that was given by the creators themselves to the created. That's the language that was communicated between them. Once that was in possession, there was a high level of power on the planet. Then the next thing that occurred is a falling away and a misunderstanding of the language. No one understood the language. Okay? So then some individuals knew still. There's a small amount of those individuals that are here on the earth. Then that became known. This language is this, though, by the way, to tell you the truth. It's the knowledge of how time and matter really work, how light really works. So that way you can take it internally and allow it to project you further into the innerverse. If you try to do that in the external reality, because external reality is very similar to a womb, it causes a lot of the situations that we're seeing now with why individuals are stuck in high levels of greed, meaning that they have so much resource to go and do things to correct the world, but they don't make really a move. So what happens is to help all the individuals here on earth free up this energy, the information and the knowledge of us understanding how deep into sleep we've actually been gives everyone a chance to really, really start over. When you see that how this reality is really put together, so little of it you've been controlling at this point, that all of your experience from the past, from not only the individuals who've done things to you, but also what you've done to others, is basically being governed by a high level of mind control, psychomancy, necromancy, playing around with geometry, deactivation, bad diets, any of this kind of thing going on to a child. Remember, humanity is not in its grown phase. Any of this going on to a child is abuse. And abuse equals certain things. So what I'm also letting you see today is that this can be your point in actually starting over, for real. It's a brand new slate. You get the knowledge and information, you get a chance to see how that knowledge and information is not only used, but also how it works. You not only learn how to assist yourself, which we call understanding, you also understand how to cycle the entire energy system, which gives you, or as they say, makes you outstanding. It allows you to do other things for other individuals. I will tell you there's a specific itemization of a lot of this information, which I'm trying to convey to everyone, and I have been doing that for 3 years now. Meaning that most of this information is written about, especially by myself, or found somewhere that I've sourced. Bringing it out into the video format is a new venture for us. So we have to get warmed up for that, I will tell everyone. It means also a lot more exposure. So for those who are already managing the site and also on the site, do leave yourself available to assist individuals as they come on board to make the complete expansion. Because you got to remember, the resistance is not one person, it's wholeness. I pretty much delivered most of what I have to say. I'm going to deliver these diagrams about the games. I didn't finish about the games, but basically you can see games at times, especially if you're not playing, is a big waste of time, right? So what if time was configured in the game itself? Meaning that the only thing that makes you entertain by wasting time would be the actual design of time. That's like the highest level of knowledge that can be produced, by the way, if you can get it. So the design of time in people looking at it caused the waste of time. So I've now uploaded that picture also. You see it's in bowling, it's in soccer, it's in football, that geometry. Also in film, I'm just going over a few facts here that I didn't get a chance to speak about in this conversation. In film, the geometry is exactly 864 millimeters. 864 millimeters square happens to also be the distance of 864,000 seconds is the diameter of the sun. The reason why this makes sense or is important, and of course we'll get a lot more on this later on, is because what film actually does is it is the actual speed of capturing light. And so I do want to encourage people to also get your videos and stuff together. Like start merging information. I would tell you just some of the administrative stuff that I needed to talk about just to kind of, close this down a little bit, is that we need what I call it an Astral DJ. It's a hyper DJ. And it's basically an individual that is logged into the platform, and they're able to put in the pictures and the video that correspond to what we're actually bringing forward. But they have to be good. Like, you got to realize, like, it's very important for people to get the message very clear. But when it's a lot of information compressed into a couple statements, someone has to be able to uncollapse that or unpack that for an individual almost immediately. So there won't be just one of these individuals. I think we'll bring on about 3 hyperdimensional DJs on the Astral Quest. And so what will happen is when I'm giving this information, I don't have to spend so much time in playing with the platform, because even playing around with Droid over here, why I'm attempting to tap into the highest level of self to get you in the know, is somewhat of a, he's a little dense. And speaking of density, what I do also want people to know is that if you engage in dense activities, and the reason I'm calling it dense, because I don't want to call it negative, because negative is the component to positive, and you need both of those to jump something off. So don't confuse negativity in itself, or negative. See negative as the pole on a battery more so than what the individuals in the reality are doing that is very harmful to other individuals. I call that dense. So when you do dense activities, what happens is that the dense activities are the ones that you do that you act like you don't know. You're in darkness, basically. You don't have any knowledge. You don't have enough knowledge to make the right decision in that moment. The more that you do, you become more denser. Now, the ethereal decisions is all about expansion. Immediately, you already feel the refreshment of the ethereal decision. But remember, the ethereal decisions are light. They're not dense compared to the dense decisions. So what happens is that you have to make sure that there's a lot of ethereal activity you're involved in, meaning the connecting with self and helping others connect to self, especially if you have some dense things going on. Like, I'm not giving you the pro-Christian speech. What I'm talking to you about is just balance and understanding that if you have a lot of dense things going on, you start to go like this. So if you're experiencing crazy situations right now, or if you have yet to figure out where your balance really is, this is the best thing to do, is to start to eliminate what you know is dense. We talk to people definitely about thinking about the new diet. Like, of course, I've been a vegetarian for now, I guess, 9 years, something like that. And so as you can see, it doesn't affect your muscle mass. So that's a popular myth. And so we have a lot coming for not only the men, the women, the children, and showing another way of how we can expand in this beautiful world that we've been put in. But still understanding, it's important for you to understand the age that we're coming out of, why we don't want that anymore. The fascination with the old way of doing things is now becoming unpopular. And so it's now time for us to understand, well, what comes next? See, in the whole world, that's what the Occupy Wall Streets and all these different things are going on. There's a great uneasiness. This is because also there's no real cure. There's nothing to soothe the situation. The only thing that can soothe this is the panuncia. The panuncia itself, or what they call the Great Arcanum, can only be accomplished within. There is no external version. This means that, and the reason is, let me tell you why. is because you are the deliverer of it. The organic being is the deliverer of the healing to this world, meaning that it won't just happen with a wave of a wand. It will happen when you yourself and personally have activated and are around other individuals that you need to activate. That's the way that it's passed. And that's why there was such a heavy level of frustration for a lot of individuals when they finally figured out the ancient knowledge and how organic it really was and how it was highly dependent upon the kind of individual that you were inside. But many of these individuals that still feel like they can't get another chance still need to be raised up. And that's what I really want to tell people today about. When you get up here, once you get the opportunity to start your energy movement again, don't fail to come down and with your prosperity and your seeds and things and spread them to the individuals into the physical reality. Don't stay up here in this Brahmic Akashic plane all day and fail to neglect that the ones that are here are really the children. And even when we come down here, as we're here now on earth, like God's in children's bodies, learning new lessons. Every time you start something new, you get the refreshment of a child. So sometimes a person feels daunted by having to learn a lot, but really you should feel rejuvenated because the knowledge in itself is going to enliven you. So I want to say again, wholeness and balance vibration. We're going to go ahead and just cut it off from here. And I'm going to also, next week, I believe it's Wednesday, we have the next episode of Astral Quest. And there's, of course, intros. And we're going to go over this message, I think, one more time. That way, you know, I'm more familiar with the system and I have a chance to upload the pictures that are necessary to get the information conveyed properly. Also, if you're interested in the Astral Quest DJ and you know you have what it takes, then you have a great level of experience with the internet. You know how to access our libraries and the imagery that we have. You have the video clipping capabilities, which you're going to definitely need. We're definitely looking for someone to man those parts of the ship or woman those parts of the ship also, for those who still see the difference. So what's happening is we're going to go ahead and end our live stream broadcast for today, and then we're going to be continuing soon. Wholeness.